Welcome, y'all. This Iwon and
Tony T.
Iwon, you lost friends, and Tony T, my scientist friend. What's up, T?
Hey, you know what it is.
I ain't seen you in a minute, man. We ain't seen each other how long?
Yeah, it's been about 8 months.
About
At
eight
least
months.
8 months. Yeah.
Yeah. Making moves. Called me for a couple situations. My fault, man. I ain't show up, man. You know
Oh,
what I'm
that's
saying?
cool.
We won. As long as we stay on the same path and meet at the top, you know what I'm saying? We A1.
That's
So no
right.
matter, I'm a good friend. You know what I'm
That's
saying? I've
right.
been showing it too.
That's right.
You have too, and I really appreciate you.
Yes, sir.
But I'm I1 from Atlanta, Georgia. Born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
Went about 6 elementaries, 2 middle schools, 3 high schools. Long story with that. Tell them something about yourself, T.
Well, I'm originally from Hampton, Virginia, Allen Iversonville, and is where the history of Hampton is where at Fort Eustis during the Civil War. If you
Okay.
made it to Hampton, my hometown,
Uh-huh.
you were free.
Okay. Like Summer Hill, Freedom Land.
Exactly.
Because most people don't know about Freedom Land. Like, you was a slave and you made it Freedom Land in Summer Hill. I do lift and I be picking up people and I be like, oh, you stay in Freedom Land. I be like, do you know what Freedom Land is? Like, you was a slave and you made it to Freedom Land, they'll buy your freedom. And they were knocking folks off. They don't talk about that, though.
Mm-hmm.
I wish you would come in there think you gonna come take somebody back or something. Boy, they were knocking folks off. So how was it over there, though? What you hear about? What you learn? I know you do history search. So.
Well, yeah. Well, Hampton University, originally Hampton Institute, started at that tree. It was called the Freedom Tree.
Oh.
So if you literally made it to that tree, you were protected. And that's where Hampton University began, right there at that tree.
Well, is the tree still there?
It is still there.
Have it branched off and grew some more? Have nobody planted none of that tree nowhere or something? You know what I'm saying? Like, hey, we're going to let this tree live forever.
Not that I'm aware of, but the tree is still there. And the crazy thing about it is, we used to go as kids. We used to ride our bikes to Hampton University campus, and then whether the coolest part were the water, because Hampton University is on the water, and we used to walk past the tree. It was just an ordinary tree, just any old regular tree, and we had no idea that we were literally walking past history.
Yeah.
Like, literally right there.
That's one reason why I started my filming company, to capture history so the next generation don't make the same mistakes.
Exactly.
Because, my Uncle Herman Russell, and I wish I could just ask him about with him growing up and what changed his situations, and my granddaddy, what kind of mindset my granddaddy had. I don't think I spent over 10 hours with my granddaddy.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying? So
Wow.
I never had a chance to really, boom, get with them. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Yeah, but Tony, I like telling folk, man.
Yes.
I got a scientist on my side.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I be like, man, he be telling me the numbers of my body. Talking about, we could build a spaceship. It's just math.
Right. Right. See, the thing about it is, we have no idea, because the way the educational system teaches math backwards.
Yeah.
So every time you see Steph Curry shoot that three, we don't even think that's geometry.
Yeah.
That's every time you see somebody with rhythm. If you have rhythm, that's mathematics. We love music. We think that Atlanta is like the hip hop capital, but we don't even know that Atlanta was the blues capital back in the early 1900s.
Talking about Ray Charles, talking about George?
No, we're talking before all of that. We're talking about like 1910, between 1910 and 1920. Atlanta was literally the blues capital of the world. And the Klan burned it down because they were so successful. They were like, nah, we can't have that progressiveness. So a lot of the rappers, hip hop, think that Atlanta became known in the music industry.
Okay.
In the early 2000s, late 90s for hip hop, but we don't even know this was the capital of blues.
Whoa.
Yeah. Atlanta's got a deep history.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
I had heard about my daddy kicking Joe Jackson out the kitchen, y'all. Michael Jackson daddy. Okay.
Wow.
So
yes, sir.
Yeah, that is wow.
Yeah.
Watching Yo MTV raps and stuff, I used to be mad because they didn't play no South music.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And then they came out with Luke and them, and I was like, that's not us. I was so glad Outkast came out.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? Like, It saved me a little bit. But like you said, we always been in the mix though.
Yeah. And that's where, the math, which is science, is simply applied mathematics. It's kind of confusing even to talk about science in such a, we talk about math and then we talk about science separately as if science isn't applied mathematics.
Yeah.
And, I didn't become a scientist until my 40s. Because, I was born in 1970. So I came up in the early 80s, became a man, kind of an adolescent in the early 80s, mid 80s, when light skin curly hair was much more profitable. It had much more ROI back in the 80s, you know what I'm saying? And so, being an athlete in high school,
Oh yeah.
five sport letterman.
Yeah, tell me about athlete day, man.
Well, the thing about it was I played football,
Okay.
ran track, but I also wrestled in the 80s. I also played tennis in the 80s before it was cool. And because my dad played tennis, and my dad was from a generation where his dad didn't talk to him. So he didn't talk to me. Like, I was a five sport letterman, went to state and all about three sports.
Okay.
And he never told me he was proud of me, any of that. So I started playing tennis because my dad was a tennis player. And I was trying to build a bond subconsciously. I was trying to build a bond with my dad. I didn't know what I was doing,
Yeah, I see what
but
you're saying.
later in life, I was like, that's what I was trying to build a bond with my dad. And I started playing tennis, which ultimately became my best sport.
Okay, yeah. See, that's why I told my 11-year-old recently, if you don't want to play the violin, don't play the violin to try to impress me, because he know I love the violin.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So I make sure, like, I don't want to change his destiny, because you got something you can show me too, son. You know what I'm saying? Like,
That's right.
we learn from each other. All right, Tony T.
Yes, sir. And, I came to Atlanta. My family relocated from Virginia in 84.
Okay.
So we came down, and as we were planning to move, all my partners in Virginia were like, "Oh man, you're gonna get missing and murdered," because this was right after the Atlanta child murders.
Oh yeah.
So we came to Atlanta like literally right after it had ended, but everybody was like, "You about to go get missing in Atlanta." So I had a little anxiety, but when we came here,
What side?
West Side,
He went to
Cobb
West Side?
County.
Cobb County.
Yeah.
That's far west, y'all.
Well, the thing about it is, I didn't
It's
even
west.
I didn't even realize Cobb County was sundown. It was sundown town.
Oh yeah. Well, back then, for real.
Yeah, was it?
Most people don't understand. You'll get pulled over in Cobb County with a wrong tail, like Fulton. Hey, what you doing over here?
Exactly.
Okay, but it don't got a lot better though.
Oh, absolutely. But when I went to high school, all of the guys had pickup trucks with rebel flags.
Oh yeah.
Like, you literally, it was like 50 rebel flags in the parking lot every day. But since I played sports, I was cool with all of the people who were traditionally not friendly with black people. But the whole thing was, the funny thing about it was, they would always say, you good, you're all right for a nigger. And I was like, and I would respond, "You're okay for a cracker."
Yeah.
And the funny thing about that is, the irony is, they would get offended by my response, as if calling me a nigger to my face. I didn't care because I knew they weren't talking about me anyway, so I never got offended by any of that.
Did what I found out recently. Not recently, but it makes sense. Like, when the slave came onto the plantation, they tried to find the person with the crackle neck.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? Redneck.
Yep.
Cracker.
Yep.
So they come on to the plantation, and they see him they call him the cracker. So when folks call us the N word, we call them the C word. We actually like, hey, you're my beater.
Exactly.
We're not down in them.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
That's another thing. See, mathematics, once you start looking at the numbers, everything changes.
Yeah.
Because, people always say, well, white people owe us because you own slaves. Well, people don't understand it. Less than 1% of white people actually own slaves.
Less?
Own it less than
Where you get that
1%.
from?
No, that's actual facts based on documented history.
Less than 1%?
Less than 1% of white people own slaves.
Around the world, or just United States?
In America.
Okay, Indians, they own slaves. Yeah. I know Indians. I mean,
but
they did it before us. Like Saudi Arabia, and they did it way before they did it. So,
well, absolutely. Well, people don't go back on. There's a thing called the Berber Wars.
Berber Wars.
Berber, and the Berber Wars, where we see piracy. back to Hampton.
Okay.
The Hampton University are the pirates.
Yeah.
All of the you ever watch Pirates of the Caribbean?
Yeah. Yeah.
You see he got dreads, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Why does he have dreads? Why does Johnny Depp have dreads? He got dreads because we black people were the pirates. Piracy was a black thing.
Yeah.
Once we were destabilized, our civilization, a lot of our culture, under the Moorish Empire, I put that in quotes. But when we were destabilized, we took to the seas.
Yeah.
See, because moor means moor is when when you anchor your boat.
Mm-hmm.
That's what moor means in the nautical term. And also, berth is where you sleep on a ship.
The word berth?
Literally the word berth means
B-I-R-T-H?
B-E-R.
B-E-R.
T-H is where you sleep on a ship. It's a nautical term. So oftentimes we're speaking nautical terms when we're talking about historical facts, and we change them. The reason why I started out with the 1% of white people actually owned slaves is because the entire history was rewritten. The Reconstruction period in the late 1800s is literally when they reconstructed history. And being a mathematician and a scientist, I became a mathematician and scientist in my 40s.
Okay.
Again, I was part of the cool guys, so I didn't have to do that. But what happened is I started doing the history, and then once I started doing the history on inventors, then I was like, hold on, okay, you mean the most profound number I have is there's a brilliant lady named Ellen Eaglin, and she invented the wringer.
Okay.
Is where when they used to wash their clothes, they would just they were running up against the washboard.
Yeah.
You know, the washboard is where they used to do it, where she invented the wringer, where you put the wash clothes in the wringer and then you turned it, and then it would lessen the process.
Okay.
Well, she sold that patent for $18 to a white agent, and within 2 years, they sold 6 million units within 2 years.
So what year that was?
1886.
So that was like $2 billion now or something?
Yes. Well, every time you ever see the new mops?
Yeah.
Where they turn?
Yeah.
That's based on her same patent.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
so literally to this day, the washing machine technology, it has some implications to her patent, but the most readily apparent one is the wringer, where you turn the mop and then it wrings the water out. That's based on her technology. So they're still making billions of dollars. And this is just one example of what the profound impact. You know how they say, well, black people have never done anything. Well, not only have black people done more than they've given credit for, but even to this day, like, see, math changes the game. Like, if we start talking about GDP per capita, you know, everybody talks about $1.3 trillion. Yes, sir. Spending, but 1.3 trillion. Spending is just one component of GDP. If you add, based on my personal calculation, if you add the total GDP based on my calculation, it's 2 trillion.
2 trillion.
Which only about 8 countries have more than $1 trillion GDP anyway. So therefore, we double most current countries. Black people in America have the 9th highest GDP.
Yeah.
In general, but when you calculate the GDP per capita, then you're talking about number 2. We're richer than China per capita, because even though China has $22 trillion GDP compared to our 2 trillion, there are 1 billion Chinese. There are only 50 million of us. So once you do the numbers, then we have a lot of clout. We don't even own a toothpick factory, let alone a car factory or planes. So when I'm, at the bars, you know, this is a trick that I get used on the female bartenders.
Okay.
I always say, if I can prove to you that black people are superheroes, I'm drinking my first 3 drinks for free. And they always say, well, there's no way. And then I go into the reality of the GDP per capita.
Yeah.
We're richer than China.
Yeah.
We don't even own a toothpick factory.
Uh-huh.
That's superhero status.
So it seems a billion of us in one spot, and a billion of them will be way more.
Well, we have more power. We got more bang for the buck.
Yeah.
We don't own any industry, but we're still the second richest country. So that means that you have to be a superhero to be able to be on that status. But I don't want to just digress into that tangent. But that's just something I wake up to every day. It's like you think about things every day that motivate you.
Yeah, every day.
And so we're talking about countries,
Yeah.
major countries with infrastructure,
Okay.
educational infrastructure,
Okay.
industrial infrastructure.
Okay.
We're richer than them
Yes.
without
Been
having
hearing.
as much as a toothpick factory. Now we're in the epicenter right here in this building
Yes.
of the Russell legacy.
Right center.
Right. The Rice Center is an anomaly in our community. People. I became aware of the Rice Center because of you. Because of your
That story.
Yeah, that's what I
That was
had.
an amazing story.
I had to tell the story. It's like you told me about the center, and then I was like, hold on. I came, and then I just started just volunteering,
Yeah.
coming to the events.
Yeah.
And once I realized what it was, I was like, how could I not be a part of such a powerful program? And this is really setting the trend for a lot of because the Russell Company
Yeah.
is an institution, one of the few institutions that we have. We don't have many, but this is one of them. And so we're literally sitting on institutional, foundational player
Yeah.
situation. This is
Yeah.
this is really what they call player.
But really, we're doing a lot. You can look up the Russell Center at russellcenter.org.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yes, sir.
Wow. All right, T, what you been up to recently, though, man?
Well, what I've been dealing with now is I'm an inventor now. Patents pending and creation of patents.
Okay.
Because once I began, I started tinkering with stuff. And then when I went into the history, and it was just story after story after story, like Thomas L. Jennings.
Yeah.
He was the first black man who ever got a patent. Now, this was not in 1800. This was not in 1890. This was in 1821.
So the patent office been out there long? When the patent office?
No, Fizz, I think they established it in the 17th century.
For real?
Yeah, late, early 18th century. But Thomas L. Jennings, you see all the laundromats?
Mm-hmm.
It's based on his patent.
Oh,
He
sheesh.
was the one who patented the process of what they call dry cleaning.
Okay.
He was a tailor in New York City,
Okay.
and a lot of his clients were saying a lot of their fine clothes, they weren't able to clean them. It was like once they got dirty, they would just throw them away.
Yeah.
So he was like, okay, well, I'm doing all this work. I'm, putting this time in, and we got to figure out a process to clean this stuff. So he invented the dry cleaning process, and that's just another foundational thing. And another cool point is when they talk about the real McCoy, that's based on Elijah McCoy.
Yeah, yeah. I think I seen a picture of him on the internet. Yeah.
The railroad coupling.
Okay.
And what happened was it was such high quality. People would say, is that regular or is that the real McCoy?
Yeah.
Which now let's bring it all kind of full circle in this little encapsulation is because what happens is when you're talking about railroad, you're talking about in the Industrial Revolution happened because of the railroad. Elijah McCoy is one of 10 that I'm familiar with personally, inventors that made the rail process possible. So all of the robber barons, that all of the major players in industry, they got their intellectual property from black people. So the entire Industrial Revolution. Now we're not going to even talk about George Washington Carver.
Oh yeah, we don't talk about the dirt they did him and how he invented stuff.
Exactly. Well, when you're reading it in the books, they talk about George Washington Carver and Henry Ford were best friends.
Yes, I
So,
know that story too.
but people don't know that before George
Ooh,
Washington
you about to
Carver,
give it to him.
I'm about
You
to
about
give
to
it to
give
them.
it to him.
I'm about to, they need to get
Well,
it.
I got chills going through my body. You finna
They,
tell them folk what they did to Washington,
they,
what they did to him.
let me just talk about one point because most people don't even understand what the Henry Ford, George Washington Carver relationship, what it actually was. It was really the kickoff of the Industrial Revolution in the
Yeah.
North because prior to George Washington Carver visiting Henry Ford's
Yeah.
factory,
Yeah.
they would make a car and it would be 20, 30 people around the car messing with the car.
Okay.
So, because George Washington Carver was a scientist, he understand plants. They call them plants to this day because of George Washington Carver. And I'll break it down. That's when the assembly line was invented by George Washington Carver.
Yep. Yep.
Because then one person would do something, they send it down the line. That's based on George Washington Carver's innovation,
Yep.
of which, again, like you said, he didn't patent it. He didn't get any residuals. Henry Ford was so gracious, he bought him an elevator. Put an elevator in his building.
I thought he asked for equipment for Tuskegee.
He did. He got some equipment for Tuskegee.
And I heard he didn't get that much.
He didn't get much at all.
I heard he flipped the trash can over and invented all that stuff out the trash can.
Absolutely. And this is just George Washington Carver, and people would ask because he only literally have 3 patents. George Washington Carver only had 3 patents to his name. And then they were asking him, why didn't you patent all of your other innovation? And then he told them, if I spent my time patenting my ideas, I would never have time to create. So in my mind, I'm dealing with the same situation because I create. There has to be a support system. See, there needed to be Tuskegee needed to be a support system for George Washington Carver as opposed to a support system for Booker T. Washington, which was the creator of the institution. But if they had gotten behind George Washington Carver, Tuskegee University would be the greatest university on the planet right now.
You gonna tell them what they did to him?
Yeah. If anyone's ever heard George Washington Carver's voice, and there are recordings of his voice, he has the highest pitched voice that you can imagine. I don't want to be one to state a fact, but the unverified notion was that he was castrated. Yes. Because
they did think he was gay because he didn't hang around women and be around women like that.
Right. So
he took his pride down, didn't tell people that they castrated him.
Right.
And let people think that he was gay. Who wanted him? Mm-hmm. Why would castrate this man like this? Well, right. Who wanted him? Right. That's a whole nother subject, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. But that happened when he was a child, though.
Oh.
Yeah, see that the supposed castration happened when he was a child because he lived with a white family. And that's another one of those untold stories. Like a lot of the house people, or I don't want to say niggas or house Negroes because I don't subscribe to that, but a lot of the house men were castrated because they didn't want to be less of a threat to the people. See, this wasn't an anomaly. It wasn't George Washington Carver's potential castration wasn't an anomaly. That was a normal occurrence of house people or house servants. But that history in and of itself is a short history. That history does not go back to 1600 nor 1700. The reality of it is the most profound stories of enslavement, of tragedy, of all of that was in the 19th century. See, so for people to be talking about 400 years or something, that's not empirical data doesn't support any notion because the United States up until the 19th century was the Eastern Seaboard. See, the Louisiana Purchase happened, right? We know that happened in the 19th century.
Yeah, it was 19th century, okay.
Exactly. California, all of that was not America. United States, the colonies were the
13th.
Eastern Seaboard. Until the 19th century, the Eastern Seaboard was America. See, so when people think about the United States history, they start trying to act like they were just big and bad, just bulldozing people, when in reality, plagues allowed them to take over America. It wasn't by guns. It wasn't by brute force. You know how we like to say they Billy Badass. You know, when we talk about history, we talk about all them bad white people that came from Europe. Well, the Black Plague was plaguing Europe. 60% of Europe died in the 17th century based on the Black Plague. The Black Plague did not go away until roughly the 19th century. So it was Europe was destabilized.
So they brought their plague over here and spread it too.
Exactly, and that's how they took over the American colony through plagues, not guns.
So that's why hospitals and stuff still banging to this day.
Well, that's a whole nother thing, because then we're gonna be talking about the Rockefeller, and I mean, I don't want to just drop
tell about
everything.
I just even Rothschild.
I don't want to drop everything because the listening audience, I don't want to push them too hard where they turn a blind ear, because it's called, I think there's a term called cognitive dissonance, and when you respect something so much, regardless of based on how your respect is the foundation of it, then you're going to reject anybody. Just like if you have a friend, say me, and you rock with me, we boys, we friends. So if somebody came to you and say, man, Tony T, man, he ain't nothing, in your mind, or the first thing you're going to do is like, man, I'm not listening to none of that.
Thank you.
That's what we do about the history books.
Oh.
We have allowed people to tell a narrative, and then when anybody challenges that narrative, then that the enemy who we're talking about, who did bad things, then that vitriol turns on the messenger who's trying to tell you that person was not your friend. And that's why I don't want to push the envelope too much on them right now, because I don't have any. You know how, like, when you're younger, you feel like you get in your feelings, and you're like, oh, these people, I don't rock with them. But the reality of it is, the majority of people on the planet have never really have been deviants. There hasn't been a collective conspiracy to do anything. There has always been a very small minority of people who have pushed that narrative. So now,
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, because right now 3 people in America have the same net worth as the bottom half, which is 175 million people. Now, we know that America has 350 million people in America. Now, we got 3 people have the same net worth, and 3 people have the same net worth as the bottom half. So now we also know that the majority of working class people make less than $50,000 a year in America. And contrary to what you see on Instagram, empirical data doesn't support those notions, those images that Instagram continuously shows.
Yeah,
those are rental cars and rental houses and a lot of scammers, because the empirical data doesn't support that many people being successful. So what happens is, if anybody is on that bottom half, there should never be an argument for the bottom half of the world, of America, black, white, Chinese, Asian, regardless. There should be love amongst the bottom half of the United States, and that's what you, and the people that we associate with, we're the glue that's going to glue the bond back been separated. But man, this been always
Tony T. Man, we got plenty of subjects to talk about, man. We ain't got on what's going on in Atlanta. We ain't got on. You need to say what your patterns are.
Right.
I ain't explain how I'm saving history.
Yep.
I ain't talk about the Russell Center.
Exactly.
Oh man, we got topics, man. We just really just improv this one, y'all.
That's right.
So we just came in here and just did what we do, just straight authentic, and it's us. Tony T Show and the Iwon Show.
That's right.
My guy.
That's what we do.
Good.